going back.
I'm going to get the get server to run in the background, so on this Ubuntu box, so it runs all the time. So I've got installing screen, installing screen. Well, it looks like use screen to attach Geth. So I can pop in and out of it by using, or in bash Geth, SH, and then doing Control A and then D to get out. Looks like it's running in the background, so it is what it is. I'm going to see bouncing back and forth here. Making sure there's some processes running. There's my screen with the Geth going on. So, looks like we have that guy. Our net stat shows got it running. Definitely 30. That port is very active. It's definitely connecting to a lot of nodes. So 30, 33. If we Control A, D out of that, and run that stat again. So it's going to have all those servers running, so I think we're good. Service is running. So I think we're good. So now we can disconnect the
I was gonna say, is Look at Me on the radio? I think so. It is? Okay, I was just asking because I didn't know, like, because all the cussing and stuff. I mean,
is this?
Hey guys, don't you just love science? I personally don't just love it. I effing love it. I adore finding out that there is real hard data that backs up all of
746. Well, to say that Milo Yiannopoulos is controversial is certainly an understatement. The former Breitbart editor is known for making inflammatory statements on a regular basis. For example, among his hits.
Among his best hits, birth control makes women unattractive and crazy. And Muslims are allowed to get away with almost anything. Quotes from him. Earlier this year, he was scheduled to speak at UC Berkeley. Student protests got so out of control that the appearance was canceled.
Now, Milo and others are planning to go back to Berkeley later this month. He's also been invited to speak here at Cal State Fullerton. And here is Milo. Good morning, Milo.
Good morning. How are you?
Pretty good. Thank you very much. Listen, I have a large question for you, and then we'll get to some smaller ones. The large question is, I mean, you are amusing, you're a provocateur, you're a comedian, you're a performance artist, you're a libertarian, you represent the alt-right whether you want to or not. But basically, what is it that you want? What do you want the world to do?
Well, I don't represent the alt-right in any way, shape or form, but the larger battle here, the thing that I fight for on American college campuses, is the right to be, do, and say whatever you want. It's about freedom of expression, the First Amendment, which is something that's under threat in this country like perhaps never before. It's under threat in Hollywood, in the media, on college campuses. There are an extraordinary variety of places, both, you know, state-sponsored and otherwise, in which people are not free to express themselves, to use the language they want to use, to argue about things without being called sexist, racist, and bigots and various other things. So what I try to do is be provocative and entertaining and blow open the fire doors, if you like, so other people feel a little bit more brave, a little bit emboldened to discuss their points of view in freer language than they would otherwise feel able to do.
You have been under siege lately, and you may be comfortable being under siege. I'm not sure, because you are. It's
my natural disposition. It's my home environment.
It is your home environment. The most serious charge had to do with the aspect of pedophilia, that you seem to have approved it. I know you try to clarify it wherever it goes, but a lot of people just condemn you for that and don't listen to anything else you have to say. What do you have to say to that?
Well, the people who don't listen to me didn't listen to that either, and they're determined not to listen to anything I say. I make a lot of nuanced arguments. I drop a lot of unsayable truths, if you like. That particular issue, I was talking about my own experiences, and something did tumble out of my mouth that I didn't intend, which I apologize for. But, you know, in no universe am I a supporter of that kind of thing. I'm actually a victim of it, which is what I was trying to explain on that late night booze-fueled podcast, which I think a couple of people got upset about because they sort of wrenched a few things from context. And there was one sentence that tumbled out of my mouth I didn't mean.
Are there many things that come out of your mouth and then later you say, well, I could have said it differently?
No, only that one. I've never apologized for anything before or since, and I hope never to apologize again in the rest of my entire career. I only apologize when I say things that I don't mean. I apologize when something comes out of my mouth that I don't intend, that leaves people with an impression that I didn't deliberately put there. And that's only happened once.
Milo, this is nothing new what you're doing. It's been around where the discourse, you know, you can say things and be banned from college campuses. I remember back when I was in school, it went on. But you know, now the public discourse has really gone so low. There seems to be no civility because of what's said on social media. And you seem to just hit the things that will get reaction. Maybe nothing more. Isn't that really what you're doing?
No, I think the answer is twofold. One is I exist in the tradition of the British polemic, which is an initial outrageous provocation, but followed by facts, by humor, by persuasiveness, something that makes you first of all angry, but then entertained, amused, engaged, and thoughtful afterwards. And that's what I hope that everybody leaves my shows feeling, is that they were initially, what is going on here, and then at the end of the show they leave saying, well, I didn't agree with anything, but there was some really interesting stuff in there, and my goodness, it was funny. So that's the thing that I like to do. But you know, I think Americans are a little sick of niceness and political correctness. I think that, you know, tiptoeing around one another has gone on a little bit too long. And actually, you know, Americans very clearly voted in the last election for somebody who wasn't stereotypically nice. I think that discourse could do with a bit of shaking up. I don't think it's the case that there's this general trajectory downwards into the gutter. I think the opposite's the problem. I think people have become so nice and so elaborately polite and so politically correct to one another that nobody says what they really mean to each other anymore, which is why when people come along, like me or Trump, we develop huge fan bases almost overnight.
Milo, I'm kind of interested in this. A lot of people who follow you, and I know you disassociate yourself from the alt-right, but
yes,
a lot of your biggest fans are in the alt-right. And yet there is this strange disconnect. As a gay male, a lot of people in the alt-right hate gay males. So how do you deal with that?
Well, I'm not just that. I'm a gay Jew with a black fiance. So attempting to crown me queen of this white supremacist movement is a bit of a stretch. I think, you know, I have a very, very broad fan base. Clearly, the term alt-right used to mean something very different from what it means now. When I wrote what is probably the most influential piece of political journalism of 2016, an establishment conservative's guide to the alt-right for Breitbart, I tried to define the movement very broadly, and it included basically all Trump voters. It's since become redefined as racists, neo-Nazis, and white supremacists. And for those people, I have nothing to offer them, and they have nothing to offer me. And I repeatedly in my college talks talk about how white power and white supremacy and white nationalism is not the answer.
Steve Bannon, who was your boss at Breitbart, is out of the White House, but he's on fire. Yes. And apparently the two of you are getting together again.
I had coffee with Uncle Steve, and that was Uncle Steve, and that was fun. And he will be speaking at Berkeley Free Speech Week, which is the big sort of spectacular that I have planned for 4 days between September 24th and 27th at UC Berkeley. Ancolt will be there as well, a bunch of other conservative and libertarian favorites. And then I intend to take as many of those people as I can with me on my new Troll Academy tour, which starts in October.
All right, and will you be disappointed if people are not upset?
I don't think that's a realistic proposition, so I don't think I have to worry about it. I think people are always going to be upset.
But Milo, the more upset they get, the more money you guys make. You're going on a tour, so, you know, that's what this is about, isn't it?
I don't mind, you know, the tears of snowflakes heating my pool. I don't lose any sleep over that. But I think that the more important question is, you know, what America really needs to do to solve its free speech problem is to make Milo Yiannopoulos redundant, right? So long as I'm still upsetting people merely for expressing normal, reasonable, mainstream conservative points of view, just doing so with humor and provocation and upsetting people you're not supposed to upset these days, so long as that is an outrageous thing to do in American public life, I will still be necessary. And the good that I do for the First Amendment is far outweigh to any, you know, cynical pleasure I might get from upset snowflakes.
There we go. Milo Yiannopoulos, thank you very much. By the way, redundant in Britain means out of work, and a lot of people would like to see you redundant. Milo, thank you for being with us. Appreciate it.
I like messy, noisy, vigorous public debate. I like an open marketplace of ideas. I'm a classical liberal, you know. I am a worshipper of J.S. Mill. You know, I read and believe in on liberty. I think it is a founding principle of Western civilization. You know, that people should be able to be, do, and say anything so long as it doesn't hurt other people. Which is why that's why this country's set up the way it is. You can believe what you want, you can say what you want, but when you strike somebody else, then the rules change.
So when you're scheduled to speak at a place where, like what happened in Berkeley happens, and there's a risk of that happening again, what's your point of view on whether or not you should go to that event?
I bear absolutely no responsibility whatsoever for the violent actions of others, and I will never accept that I do, because once you do that, you award a heckler's veto to people who threaten violence against you or your audience, and it is just handing them a way of shutting you up. I will never accept responsibility for the violent acts of others, and nobody should ask me to. In the same way that if I lose my temper with somebody in the street and strike them, nobody is responsible but me. There's a very clear distinction in law, in morality, in, you know, a very clear distinction, I think, in all right-thinking people. There's a difference between shouting with somebody and punching them. There's a difference between saying that I want to do something, like I'm going to steal you or whatever, and actually stealing it. Yeah? There's a big difference between speech and action, and the left wants to break down that distinction. You know why? Because they want to legitimize their own violent responses to other people's ideas. That's the root of safe space and trigger warning culture in colleges.
There's a big conspiracy going on with the left.
No, it's not a conspiracy. It is a political. It's a political approach. It is a weapon of war. Right? It's not a conspiracy. The reason that liberals want to muddy the water between speech and action is to legitimize their own violent responses to conservatives' ideas. If you say, as they do, when I come onto campus, that I represent a threat to student safety, yeah? I don't. I might be 6'2", but I'm skinny and I'm gay, and I don't represent a threat to anyone's safety. I couldn't beat up a paper bag, right? But when you say that I represent a threat to student safety, you're implying something with that word. The safe spaces and trigger warnings culture all implies that there is some kind of physical threat, or a threat that is equivalent to a physical threat, and it is designed to legitimize a violent response.
The college Republicans are upset that they're being asked to pay a lot of money to provide security, or to pay for the security at these kinds of events.
Well, they're upset because it's a double standard. Because if Lena Dunham or Amy Schumer were speaking, the college would not be requiring those security fees. Because
would there be that kind of violence expected at that kind of event?
Well, they don't say anything interesting or controversial enough to warrant that kind of response. But take, for instance, there are left-wingers who attract protesters, right? There are. And there are plenty of, and there are, for instance, Muslim hate preachers who have spoken at American universities who have attracted right-wing protesters, right? I have probably visited more college campuses than anybody else in the last year. And by the time my next tour finishes, I may have visited more college campuses than anybody in history. I have never heard of an instance of a prominent, controversial, left-wing author or thinker or speaker being prevented from speaking because the college insisted on thousands of dollars in security fees, It's remarkable how universities find these huge, deep pockets to magically waive security fees when the speaker has the right politics. When the speaker has the wrong politics, as I do, then you'll find universities trying to charge $46,000 for 3 hours in an auditorium. And that's something we're currently wrestling with for my next tour. $46,000. We asked for a single instance in the entire history of that institution when that fee has ever been charged to anybody else, and their response was to drop the fee by half. That tells you everything you need to know. And that is the double standard that the college Republicans are objecting to.
What are your future plans?
Lots more drama, lots more chaos, lots more of everything that people have come to know and love.
Are you just a flamethrower? You're just out there just raising hell?
Is that homophobic? I don't know.
I didn't intend it to be. So
I know, I'm messing. No, please don't apologize. I'm messing with you. Good grief. You've been in the system too long, please.
I guess so.
No, look, there seems to be this idea that you can't be a conservative and be funny, or you can't be a conservative and be provocative. John Oliver, Jon Stewart, Bill Maher, and I could list another 20. I could list another 20. Why can they do it and we can't?
So this is an act?
No, I didn't say it was an act. Jon Stewart doesn't describe himself as an act. Jon Stewart describes himself as Jon Stewart. He says he's a comedian, but he doesn't describe it as an act. Is Bill Maher an act? Bill Maher's never described himself as an act. Would you consider Bill Maher an act?
He's a comedian.
He's a comedian. Maybe I'm a comedian.
Okay, now we're getting somewhere.
Maybe I'm both. Why has the left allowed people who speak intelligently about current affairs and crack jokes and upset people? No, just let me hear me out on this. Why is the left allowed these hybrid entertainment and current affairs figures, and the right isn't? There isn't a single example on the right. There's not a single Republican example.
Is Ann Coulter an act?
No, I know Ann. She's very sincere, and she's very serious. Ann's very serious. She's like a serious, sincere, like severe person. I mean, she's witty and barbed, and her books are like laugh out loud funny because she's got such a brilliant wit. But she's not a
Dennis Miller.
I mean, they're pretty thin on the ground, aren't they? Name somebody with their own show, you know? Name somebody with their own primetime show, a current affairs show where they do skits, tell jokes. If you were okay, so imagine your son, right? Did you have any children? Okay, so imagine if you did. You had a son, he turned out to be center-right, shock horror, sorry. He turns out to be center-right, and he says, Dad, I want to watch something like, I don't know, Real Time, or The Tonight Show, or, you know, The Late Show, or whatever, but I'm a Republican. What do I watch? What do you answer? Well, in a couple of years you'll be able to say the Milo Show. But
okay, is that what you want to do?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Because I want to be the first of many. I want to be the first of dozens. But the main reason I want to do it is not because I want to strap myself to that kind of recording schedule. Because, quite frankly, I like being on holiday and having a nice life. The reason I'm doing it is I'm like Cincinnatus. You know, there's a duty. I have been called upon to pave the way for others. Hopefully, I can retire by 50 or something. But the reason I'm doing it, and the reason I do everything I do, is to draw attention to hypocrisy and double standards. The reason I do everything is to make space for others. I don't want everybody to be like me. I don't want everybody to be a bomb thrower. I don't want everyone to be rude and mean and vindictive and spiteful and catty. You know,
that's your thing.
That's my thing.
Right.
That's my thing. Like, that's me. Right. But when Trump is outrageous and rude, and when I am mean and spiteful and bitchy, both of us, by the way, normally write about almost everything. When we do that, we open up the space behind us for other people to speak more freely and to be more confident in expressing their views. And the Google memo disaster, which is what it was for the company, is the perfect demonstration of why we're both necessary. Because a reasonable, respectable, well-mannered guy who wasn't advocating for politics, he was advocating for science, got fired for bringing up the wrong studies. And that's why I'm not going anywhere, and that's why Donald Trump is in the White House.
All right. So what channel would you be on? Do you think? Are you talking? I
don't know. I think it has to be the Milo network. If Oprah's got her own network, then I don't see why I can't have one. I mean, look, it would be nice to. My thing, unlike previous conservatives, is I like to park my tanks on their lawn. You know, other conservatives just will you know, have think tanks and publish policy papers and write long essays. I like to actually do something. This is why I have a college tour. I actually show up. You know, I will go when I'm invited by college Republicans and actually show up and do something. I spend my own money and I go and I do it, you know? I actually give something of myself. Liberals do that, conservatives typically don't. Most conservatives in this country, establishment Republicans, incredibly self-serving, you know, two-faced, duplicitous, self-serving waste of space. But I actually try to do something and go somewhere, and you know, imagine how much easier my life would be if I just pretended to be a liberal. Imagine like I would have a TV show by now, you know? Imagine how much easier my life would be if I just went, if I just took the easy route. But I'm trying to take the route that, of integrity, you know? And so when I show up and I make the space for other people to be more confident in what they have to say and to express themselves, I'm merely functioning as a symbol of what the upper limit of free expression looks like. I'm not saying everybody should be like me, but I will tell you one thing. Having watched for the last 10 years, and gay is at the edge of culture. We're like the canaries in the coal mine, you know. We see stuff coming before everybody else because we're the ones who are going to the comedians who tell the most outrageous jokes and reading the books that say the worst things about people because we get off on that stuff. After 30 years of censorship from the left, something has changed. Something has changed in the American popular consciousness, and the sympathy has gone from the sentiment rather has gone from let's be nice to people and not offend anyone to why are you stopping me from telling the truth? What have you got to hide?
Hey, what's up my friend, Calicanai here, and welcome to my home. Now, as you continue to pay attention here over the next few minutes, I'm going to show you some things that I think that you're going to find pretty cool. You see, the question that I get most often, right, is, Cala, how did you do it, right? How did I go from earning minimum wage, working in a coffee shop, living in my mom's spare bedroom,
James Damore, thank you for joining me. You are a hero to some, a villain probably to about the same number of people. You are the author of the now infamous Google memo. I like to think of you also as the first moment in a new wave of resistance against a sort of stifling, politically correct culture in corporate America. But we'll talk about that in a minute. First of all, by now, most people are familiar with what you did. You wrote a memo, which I thought was very carefully, reasonably, and generously worded about political culture, corporate culture at Google, the sorts of things you're allowed to say and not allowed to say. And that memo included some references to scientific findings about the differences between men and women. Now, what happened since, most people by now will know, but what I want to get to in this interview, the heart of it, is why you did it. So you come to the interview today in a t-shirt that suggests to me that you have a little troll in you. There's a little mischievous pot stirrer in James Damore. So I get the impression you're smart enough to know what was going to happen when you did this. So why did you do it?
I think maybe I don't think I was really smart enough to know what was going to happen, but I just really felt like some things need to be said, and they just weren't. So I was willing to put my name down and just say what I needed to say. I really didn't think that I would be fired, though.
Right. You must have had some awareness from maybe following the trajectory of this debate, let's say, in the public square, how vilified people are for stepping outside the politically correct consensus. I mean, the subject of your memo itself contained your own fate. You know, I mean, you sort of indirectly predicted your own end at Google as a result of it. You must have had some awareness of the fact that it would be at least controversial. I think it took a lot of bravery to put your name to it, which vanishingly few people in American public life are prepared to do. I almost didn't do this interview because I was very angry at you for stealing my crown of America's most famous woman hater. But no, you knew you'd get some kind of notoriety from it, you know, which I'm sure that it wasn't your primary objective. I believe you, and I've seen you in other interviews. I believe you that you wanted to do it because you felt that something had to be said. When it all started kicking off, when the media began to report your memo as being an example of sort of misogynistic dude bro culture, misrepresenting its contents,
proving a point for you, in other words. Talk me through the sequence of events. Obviously, it was circulating on one of Google's internal systems, and then it started to attract attention. I first became aware of it when, and we're going to talk about the contents a little bit later, but I first became aware of it when I saw it reproduced, I think, on Engadget, where they had removed all of your footnotes and all of your references and then proceeded to refer to it as poorly sourced or poorly researched or something like that. And I noticed it immediately because you can tell from the way that it's written that there was a footnote or there was a note there. Because, you know, when people write, that you can tell when there's a you can sort of pick it up as a journalist. I knew that there was a link to something there, you know, that had been stripped out. When this started to circulate, what was going through your head? What were you thinking when your co-workers, for instance, started putting this controversy and you together? What was I just want to understand the process between you releasing this and the cataclysm that followed. What was the atmosphere like at Google, and what did you experience?
Yeah, so I guess I initially shared it about a month and a half ago, actually, to the diversity programs, and they just ignored it. And
surprise, surprise.
Yeah, and I mean, I sent it to some individual Googlers, and they actually had some reasoned discussion, but it was only after it became viral, and it was obvious that many people were actually agreeing with it, that all this outrage started to happen.
Interesting. So you only became a figure of hate when you started to become dangerous.
Right.
When you were just a sort of lone dissenting voice, they didn't care too much about you. But when it became clear that you had support, they needed to squash it immediately.
Right.
How did that manifest itself? Like, you know, just sort of what did you get calls? Did you get like called into your manager's office? Did you get co-workers sort of like looking at you weirdly? What happened?
A lot of it was just these public posts that like my VP would post where he just says, "Oh, this is harmful. Don't even look at it. This is not us." And then you'd see all these people, "Oh yeah, he's just a misogynist," and all these things. He's providing this platform to just crucify his own employee, which is really bad. I was sent into HR, but they told me, "Yeah, we can't take this down because, you know, this is just political speech and you can't censor this." And I told them explicitly so many of the actual illegal discrimination that's happening in the company. And they're like, "Oh, yeah, okay, we'll follow up."
Of course, never having any intention of doing so.
Yeah.
So you started to get the attention of your bosses, your managers, and then as it spiraled out of control and became a public issue, I guess then you started to hear about yourself indirectly. You know, you start to see statements appear in the press about this controversy that you didn't know were coming, like the CEO says something or the vice president of diversity or whatever. It sort of spirals out of your control, and you feel like you're in the center of the tornado at that point, I guess. Were you scared at any point? Were you enjoying it? Well, the reason I ask is I believe you when you say that the reason you did this is because it needed to be said. But you have taken to the controversy quite enthusiastically. And you show up in provocative T-shirts. I love one. I want one. You've given interviews to people on the internet who would not be considered, who are not mainstream media people, who are quite partisan on particular issues. That's right. Let's put it like that. You seem to have embraced the attention this has brought you. In the initial stages, when you were being mischaracterized, when you were being called names, when all this was spiraling out of control, were you scared? Were you enjoying the process? Was it just all a bit bewildering and you were sort of taking it second by second? How having sort of taken the plunge and been like, you know what, sorry, I'll just do it and press publish. Like, between that and getting fired, let's say, what's the sort of emotional trajectory you went through?
Yeah, so it was a ton of stress, and you know, at least I've begun to understand that when you're really stressed, you start seeing threats everywhere. So, you know, while I was at work, if anyone would start talking to me, I would immediately be like, "Oh man, are you trying to attack me or something?" And there were some people that sent some personal threats to me, but
from within the company.
Yeah.
And what did they say? What kind of thing?
I'll hunt you down, and you know, it's either you or me. One of us is going to leave.
People making specific physical threats against you from within the Google.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. I don't know if they've ever cracked down on this at Google, because there were so many horrible aspects of our culture that really rose to the surface in this controversy.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's take it away from you for a second. How would you characterize the atmosphere at Google? I mean, you pretty much said what you think in your memo, but flesh that out a little bit for us. Give us a sense of what the atmosphere is like. I want to know, would you be able to have the kind of conversation we're having? Talk about maybe, you know, Jonathan Haidt studies, or about, you know,
Hey guys, today I wanted to show you how to mine Ethereum if you're running Ubuntu 16.4. So I've got my mining rig here with an AMD Sapphire. The first thing you need to do is go over to download the one for Ubuntu 16.04. So just select one of these drivers, find your driver, and you can honestly click on any of and open up this folder here, green file here, window, and type in these commands. So sudo apt-get clean, and add this other repository. It's going. If you don't already have Google Chrome, then go ahead and download it. So you want to select the .deb file for Debian or Ubuntu. Open that file. Type in your root or sudo password. Now once that's installed, have Google Chrome, then go ahead and download it. So you want to select the .deb file for Debian or Ubuntu. Open that file. Type in your root or sudo password. Now once that's installed, go ahead and open up Google Chrome. If it asks you to make a keyring password, then go ahead and do that. Once you have Google Chrome open, you can sign in if you want to. I'll go ahead and skip that for now. Click on Apps up here and go to the web store. And look for MetaMask.
Oh, hang on.
Install this Chrome extension.
I give up. Just do no install though.
Once you have this installed, go ahead and click on the extension icon here. Read through the terms of service. Continue. Create a password.
Oh, no. But I don't know.
And here you'll be given a phrase. Make sure you record this phrase as well as your password. You can use this phrase to restore your MetaMask account onto any other computer.
Yes, please.
And now at this point, click up here and make sure you select the main Ethereum network. Then go ahead and type in your password. Once you've logged in, click on this icon up here to copy your Ethereum address. Pull up a text editor like Get It and paste in your Ethereum address. Now make sure you don't forget your password or lose the phrase that you were given. If you do, then you're not going to be able to recover your Ethereum address. This is just a test Ethereum address, so there's not going to be any Ethereum in it, or I'm not even going to be using this Ethereum address after this video. But anyways, get your Ethereum address, and now we have everything we need to start mining. So go ahead and close everything out. You don't need anything else open except for your window with your Ethereum address. So to figure out your max hash rate, you type in ETH miner dash G dash capital G dash capital M. So copy this command and open up a terminal anywhere. Paste that command and run it. This is going to generate a DAG file and then run 5 tests to see what your maximum hash rate is. You type in ETH miner dash G dash capital G dash capital M. So copy this command and open up a terminal anywhere. Paste that command and run it. This is going to generate a DAG file and then run 5 tests to see what your maximum hash rate is. So on Linux, the first time you run this, it may not give you a reading at all, so just press the up arrow key and run it again. And now the number that you're looking for is your maximum, which is this number here. And to figure out your max hash rate, pull up the calculator and get this number here and divide it by 1 million. So your max hash rate would be 96 if you had a similar rig to mine. It's very close to 97, but you always round down when you're trying to figure out your maximum. At this point, I would suggest that you restart your computer just to be safe, because we just installed the driver. You typically don't have to reboot Linux, but you know, it's good practice to reboot the computer after you install a driver. So go ahead and restart the computer. And this computer here is dual booted, so it's got Ubuntu for mining and Windows for modifying the BIOS. So once you're back on the desktop, the next thing you should do is change your power settings. So right click and go to change desktop background, and then click on all settings over here, go to brightness and lock, and then change this to not lock the screen when the computer goes inactive. Don't require your password when waking. And then go over to the power settings and make sure that you change to suspend when inactive 4 to don't suspend. If it suspends, then it's going to stop mining. After you've made sure of that, go ahead and right-click anywhere.